Chosen ones. There's something happening that defies ordinary explanation. You didn't just act boldly, you activated your chosen one frequency, and when divine power moves through someone, it creates an energetic signature that lesser consciousness cannot ignore or forget. You weren't just making a decision, chosen one. You were dropping a spiritual meteor into a world of sleeping souls, and the crater you created will never heal because it exposed the infinite gap between your divine alignment and their unconscious limitations. Right now you're living rent-free in heads everywhere. Not the cheap room in the back either. You've got the penthouse suite with a panoramic view of insecurities, and you didn't even ask for a security deposit. But this domination of mental real estate didn't happen overnight. This has been building, escalating, preparing for the moment when you would finally show everyone who you really are. For years, maybe your whole life, others thought you were mapped out like a well-worn road. The same turns, the same signs, the same predictable stops. Confidence existed in how you'd handle every situation, every pressure point, every moment of tension. If pushed, you'd pull back. If ignored, you'd quietly swallow it. If control was attempted over outcomes, you'd adjust yourself to keep the peace. That predictability wasn't just comforting, it was hidden leverage. Entire strategies were built on the assumption that you'd never change the pattern, never break the script written for your life. But what wasn't realized is that every moment of restraint you showed, every time you chose patience over power, you were actually gathering energy, building pressure, preparing for something that couldn't be seen coming. The foreshadowing was there all along, but comfort in assumptions made the signs unreadable. The way your eyes would flash with something deeper when pushed too far. The slight pause before you'd agree to something that didn't serve you. The moments when your silence carried more weight than words around you. You were giving glimpses of what was coming, but restraint was mistaken for weakness instead of recognizing it as the calm before the storm. Then you didn't just tweak the pattern, you broke it in half with such force that the sound is still echoing in minds everywhere. The thing about broken patterns is the mental chaos created reverberates through every assumption people have built confidence on. You didn't gradually shift or slowly evolve, you erupted with precision that left no room for misinterpretation. People don't like to admit it, but so much confidence comes from believing others can be anticipated. You shattered that safety net, and now endless loops of replay happen, trying to understand when you decided to rewrite the rules. But there was no warning, no gradual build-up that could be spotted, no opportunity for preparation. One minute you were operating in rhythms that were counted on, and the next you were doing something so far outside that rhythm, it made everyone feel like sleeping had been happening the entire time. This is where the first major revelation hits. Shock isn't just at you. Embarrassment exists at never seeing it coming. The power shift was instant, irreversible, and absolutely devastating to any sense of control. Before, feelings might have existed of having the upper hand, of being able to predict and therefore control the space between you and others. But once you broke the pattern, uncertainty was created, and uncertainty in minds that thought you were understood becomes a personal nightmare, because now caution exists, hesitation, even in small interactions. But this is just the beginning of psychological unraveling. What you revealed in that moment was just the tip of something much deeper, much more powerful, and completely unstoppable. The pattern break was the opening move in a game that wasn't even known to be happening. But you showed everyone a version of you that can't be put back in the box, and this revelation is what's keeping people awake at night. There are moments when someone shows a side of themselves that completely changes how others see them forever. That's exactly what happened with you, Chosen One. You revealed a version of yourself that can't be unseen, can't be forgotten, and certainly can't be controlled. This wasn't a minor shift or a temporary burst of boldness. It was a full unveiling of a part of you that had been there all along, hidden under layers of patience, restraint, and the benefit of the doubt you kept giving people who never deserved it. Once that layer was peeled back, the old version of you that was comfortable to deal with was gone forever. The thing that unsettles most is how permanent it feels. You didn't just have a moment. Clarity was made, whether spoken aloud or not, that this is who you are now. Someone sharper, stronger, and far less tolerant of things you once allowed. You can't be put back into boxes that had been constructed, because those containers don't even exist anymore. And the fact that you made this shift without input or control makes others deeply uneasy. For people who built interactions with you around your old self, this is a complete reset that wasn't asked for and can't be influenced. Different approaches are now required, words must be weighed more carefully, and complete rethinking of how to deal with you is necessary. Every conversation, every encounter from this point forward is filtered through the reality of what has now been seen. It's not paranoia, it's recognition that the balance of power has shifted in ways that can't be undone. But what really sticks, what creates that inescapable mental loop, is how natural it seemed for you. You didn't force it, you didn't over-explain it, you simply showed up as the truer, unfiltered version of yourself. And there's something about authenticity that leaves deeper marks than anything else. Comfort can't be found by calling it an act, because deep down everyone knows this is real, this is you unleashed, and there's no going back. You forced others to confront personal fragility in the most devastating way possible. What you did didn't just leave an impression, it exposed a truth that wasn't ready to be faced. You didn't just act boldly, you revealed how fragile everyone else really is compared to the strength you've been carrying all along. People walk around wearing layers of confidence, authority, and control, but a lot of that is a carefully constructed facade perfected over time. When you moved the way you did, it stripped away that mask, and underneath was something far more unstable than would ever be admitted. Beliefs exist about being unshakable, that nothing could truly rattle foundations, but your action hit in a way that made everyone realize confidence isn't as deep as was thought. It's one thing to hear about strength or resilience, it's another to stand in front of it and see what it actually looks like in action. That's what you did, Chosen One. You gave everyone a living, undeniable example of a kind of strength that doesn't flinch, doesn't hesitate, doesn't break under pressure, and it made questioning happen about everything regarding themselves. Expectations probably existed that you would hesitate, break, or play it safe the way most people do when pressure is on. Instead, you handled the moment with a level of clarity and decisiveness that wasn't thought to exist in you. That's where shock transforms into something deeper, recognition that maybe handling it the same way wouldn't have been possible. This is the part that lingers, the part that creates the obsessive replay loop. Every time the situation is thought about, comparison to you can't be helped. And in that quiet internal comparison, coming up short keeps happening. That's not an easy thing for anyone's ego to digest, especially if strength or control has always been part of self-perception. The truth is, you didn't just survive something, you handled it with a kind of steadiness that stripped away illusions about everyone else. It's not that hatred exists for you because of it, it's that the mirror you held up in that moment can't be shaken. Cracks in armor were seen, and now hyper-awareness exists of every weakness you revealed just by being authentically powerful. But let's not sugarcoat it. The truth is still hidden. It's been twisted. It's been buried under censorship, algorithms, and fear. Yet your heart never stopped recognizing what's real. That's why you're still here. That's why you never tapped out. Because you felt the simulation glitch beneath your feet. You know this world is rigged, and you're done waiting for permission to rise. The Obsidian Inner Order wasn't built for the curious, it was forged for the committed. This is for the full-time chosen, the ones who came to lead, the ones who see beyond the veil and act anyway. Inside we hold weekly Zoom calls that cut through the noise. We share hidden teachings most were never meant to hear. We train in psychic warfare, strategy, and spiritual technologies they've kept locked away for centuries. This is the toolkit for the real ones, the ungovernable, the impossible to erase. It's time to remember who you are. The link is in the description. Your real life begins inside. You gave everyone proof that assumptions were not just wrong but insultingly lazy. Others thought you were figured out, and the worst part is effort wasn't even put in to really see you. Your version was built on quick judgments, half-heard stories, and whatever parts of yourself you let slip in presence. A shallow profile was stitched together in minds and then treated like established fact. No need was felt to dig deeper. Limits, strengths, and weaknesses had already been decided. That's the danger of lazy assumptions. Belief in being right is allowed without ever testing theories. Then you went and did something that didn't just nudge perception, it smashed it into pieces so completely that fragments are still being found later. In that instant, everything thought to be known about you was proven wrong, and not in a subtle way. The gap between assumptions and the reality you showed was so wide it forced minds into overdrive. Now being stuck replaying the moment happens, trying to figure out where things went wrong and how so much about you was missed. For some, the embarrassment is worse than the shock. It's humbling to realize being wrong about someone occurred, especially when the benefit of the doubt was never bothered to be given in the first place. You've made realization happen that being wrong wasn't the only issue. Carelessness in judgment existed. And when that kind of truth hits, it lingers like smoke that can't be cleared from a room. Going back to the comfort of old opinions can't happen because you've made believing in them impossible anymore. What unsettles most is knowing this wasn't a one-time fluke. You didn't just break assumptions, you set a precedent that you're far more complex, capable, and unpredictable than credit was ever given. That means reliance on the easy, simplified version carried in minds can no longer happen. From now on, every interaction carries that weight, awareness that there's more to you than can be seen at first glance, and that underestimation has already happened once. That's why it keeps running through minds on an endless loop. You didn't just surprise, you forced admission that you were never really known at all. This is where everything comes together, where all the building pressure finally explodes into a moment so powerful it reshapes everything that comes after. You shifted the power dynamic without asking permission, and this is the climactic moment that changes not just how others see you, but how everyone sees themselves and their personal place in your world. Power is something most people think has to be granted. That invitation is needed to take up space, to speak with authority, or to lead, process, discussion, or at minimum some kind of approval is expected before shifts happen. But you bypassed all of that entirely. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't ask if it was acceptable. You simply acted in a way that made it clear you were no longer playing supporting roles in any environment you occupied. And just like that, the balance shifted with such seismic force that everyone felt it. The difference between taking power and being given power is massive, and this difference is what creates the psychological crater that everyone is still staring into. When you take it through action, there's no room for others to control terms or put limits on it. That's what makes your approach so unsettling. Easing into this change didn't happen, shaping it didn't happen, and certainly preparing for it didn't happen. One moment operations were happening in spaces where others felt in charge, and the next reactions to you were happening instead of the other way around. That realization stings because it forces seeing that whatever authority was believed to be held over you was only as strong as your willingness to play along. The second you stopped playing by rules around you, the structure being leaned on collapsed completely. And because this wasn't done through confrontation alone, but through undeniable action, arguing it away or dismissing it as empty threats can't happen. The shift didn't come from words, it came from proof, from demonstration, from the kind of authentic power that can't be faked or negotiated. Now being stuck in that crater you created happens, replaying the exact moment that change was felt. It's not just about what you did, it's about how it made everyone feel, that sudden awareness that being the center of control wasn't happening anymore. Power dynamics are deeply psychological, and once hierarchy changes in minds, reversing it becomes nearly impossible. You acted from a place of certainty, not desperation, and that means you can do it again. Predicting when can't happen, stopping it can't happen, and undoing the fact that everyone in that space now sees you differently can't happen. That's why letting it go can't happen, because the power shift wasn't just in the moment, it's permanent. You made quiet competitions obvious in a way that exposed everything that had been hiding. Some people will never openly admit seeing you as competition, but feeling it in subtle ways happens. The sideways comments, the need to one-up you in small ways, the strange tension when achievement happens. A quiet private game has been happening, where secret scorekeeping occurred, with conviction of being ahead, or at least close enough to feel in control. Then you made a move that blew that entire unspoken game wide open. You didn't just win a round, you took the kind of step that made it clear being in the same league had never really been happening. The gap between you and everyone else became undeniable in that moment, impossible to ignore or rationalize away. That's the humiliation that can't be shaken, realizing energy investment into competing with someone who didn't even notice the race had been happening. You weren't watching moves, chasing the same goals, or measuring yourself against others. You were simply moving in your own lane, and yet your progress overshadowed efforts without you even trying. When someone lives in quiet competition, pride depends on believing closeness to matching you or surpassing you exists. But when you create such clear and undeniable distance, that pride takes a direct hit. It's like a private scoreboard that's been updated for too long, suddenly lighting up in neon with the truth. Losing badly has been happening. Now, every time thinking about you happens, it's not just about what you accomplished, it's about what your success exposed regarding personal limitations. You revealed the game being played, and once hidden competition becomes visible, pretending it never existed becomes impossible. Being left with discomfort of knowing competing in secret and losing in public has been happening exists with no one but self to blame. The irony is devastating. Setting out to embarrass anyone wasn't your goal. You just made a move that was authentic to you, and in doing so, forced to face the reality of where everyone actually stands. And now that the truth is out, it's a truth that will keep being tripped over every time your name comes up. You proved that fear of loss doesn't control your decision-making process, and this proof is what establishes your complete domination over mental landscapes everywhere. Most people don't realize how much of existence is built around fear until seeing someone living without those constraints, dressing it up with reasonable language about being responsible or thinking things through happens, but underneath, the truth is simple. Terror of losing something exists. It might be image, comfort, financial security, or even approval of people around. That fear dictates choices more than will ever be admitted. Then you came along and made a decision that broke that unspoken rule completely. You didn't cling to something just because it was familiar, safe, or expected. You were willing to let it go, not recklessly but with full awareness of what it meant, because it no longer aligned with your truth. That's not a move most people can even imagine making, and it rattles everyone to the core in ways still being processed. What unsettles isn't just what you let go of, but the way you did it. There was no begging, no desperate attempt to hold on, no compromising principles for the sake of staying comfortable. You showed that your integrity, your peace, and your authenticity outweigh any fear of loss. That kind of mindset is dangerous to people who have built entire lives around keeping what is had at any cost. When seeing someone like you act from that place of freedom, questioning personal lives is forced. If you can walk away from something others are terrified to lose, then maybe the security being clung to isn't strength, maybe it's a cage. That realization is uncomfortable because it means the safety being held onto isn't strength, it's confinement. And here's the part that will never be said aloud. Admiration exists. Even if it scares, deep down wishes exist to operate with that same level of self-trust. But instead of acknowledging admiration, fixation on you happens, replaying the decision, trying to understand how you found courage that can't seem to be accessed. That's why you stay in minds, dominating thoughts like a conquest that can't be reversed. You didn't just make a bold move, you proved that fear of loss has no hold on you. And for people who are ruled by that fear, there's nothing more both inspiring and terrifying than someone who has mastered the art of letting go. You made the impossible look effortless, and this effortless mastery is what cements your psychological dominance. Others had already written you off, convinced that certain things were beyond reach, either for you or for anyone. Goals were filed neatly under unrealistic, too hard, or not worth the effort. That made comfort possible. Pushing didn't have to happen, facing risk didn't have to happen, and believing the world simply wasn't built for someone to succeed in that way could continue. Difficulty became a shield, a safety net, and an excuse for staying stagnant. Then you did exactly what was said couldn't be done, and you made it look easy. There was no visible struggle, no frantic scrambling, no dramatic theatrics. You just executed seamlessly, decisively, and with confidence that made jaws drop. That effortless display hits harder than any confrontation or argument, because it directly contradicts everything that's been told to justify inaction. What drives everyone crazy isn't just that you succeeded, it's how natural it looked. Clinging to the belief that hardship is necessary for achievement, that success has to be messy and grueling, had been happening, and then you showed up and disproved it without even appearing to try. You turned the spotlight back on everyone without saying a word, and this silent exposure is what makes your dominance complete. When you made your move, it wasn't just about showing your own strength, it was about revealing a contrast that couldn't be ignored. Without saying a single word, you shifted attention in a way that highlighted weaknesses, insecurities, and the limitations that had been hiding behind facades. The brilliance of it is that pointing it out didn't have to happen. The spotlight naturally reflected back on everyone else, leaving them staring at themselves and realizing how small actions, reactions, and efforts look next to yours. That kind of revelation cuts deeper than any confrontation because it comes from personal perception. You didn't attack, belittle, or make a spectacle. You simply operated at your level, and the comparison happened automatically. Egos can't help but notice, and that internal comparison is far more powerful than anything you could say. The worst part is that there's no one else to blame, no one forced feeling inadequate, handed defeats in public, or highlighted flaws. It was the natural consequence of your presence and your action, being left with the uncomfortable truth that measurement against a standard that wasn't set is happening, and coming up short without anyone having to point it out exists. It's also infuriating because it exposes reliance on external validation. You've created something far more powerful than admiration or even fear. You've created obsession, and this obsession is consuming mental energy in ways that were never expected. Finding oneself analyzing your expressions, dissecting your words, searching for clues in conversations that happened long ago occurs. Your presence has become a constant reference point in minds, the measuring stick against which every decision, every reaction, every moment of existence gets evaluated. What makes this obsession so intense is that thinking about what you did isn't the only thing happening. Reverse engineering your entire mindset is being attempted. Understanding how someone moves through the world with that level of certainty, that kind of unshakable foundation is wanted. But every time getting close to figuring it out seems to happen, realization occurs that something fundamental is missing, something that can't be learned or copied. The psychological grip you have on thoughts goes beyond respect or intimidation. It's become a compulsion, catching oneself wondering what you would do in certain situations, how you would handle challenges, what you would think of choices occurs. You've become the voice in heads that can't be silenced, the standard that can't be reached, and the reminder of everything that isn't being achieved. This mental occupation isn't limited to conscious thoughts either. You show up in dreams, in anxious moments, in the quiet spaces between busy days. Being in the middle of completely unrelated activities and suddenly remembering something about your energy, your composure, your unwavering sense of self happens. That memory hits like a wave that can't be prepared for, leaving momentarily disoriented by the contrast between who you are and who everyone else is. The most disturbing part is realizing this isn't temporary. This isn't something that can be worked through or gotten over with time. You've fundamentally altered psychological landscapes in a way that feels permanent. Every day that passes without seeing you in action again only intensifies curiosity about what other depths you possess, what other capabilities you haven't revealed yet. The impact of what you did hasn't stayed contained within the immediate circle of people who witnessed it. Word travels, energy shifts, and the reverberations of your move have reached places and people you might not even realize. Those who heard about it secondhand are now curious about this person who could create such a powerful reaction in others, seeing for themselves what all the fascination is about, is wanted. This expanding awareness creates a phenomenon where your reputation precedes you into rooms you haven't even entered yet. People are paying attention now in ways that never happened before, watching for signs of the same energy that caused such a profound impact. You've become a topic of conversation, a point of reference, a living example of what's possible when someone operates from authentic power. The beautiful irony is that the more talking about you happens, the more your influence gets cemented. Every conversation about what you did reinforces the reality that you've achieved something remarkable, something that deserves continued analysis and discussion. Thinking that just sharing an interesting story is happening occurs, but what's actually happening is spreading your psychological impact like seeds in fertile ground. Even people who weren't there, who only heard about it through others, find themselves intrigued by the idea of someone who could create such lasting effects through a single decisive action. Looking for you in crowds starts happening, hoping to witness firsthand the kind of presence that could leave such permanent marks on consciousness. What you've created goes far beyond personal impact. You've become a catalyst for transformation in ways that even you might not fully grasp yet. The people who can't stop thinking about you aren't just obsessing over what you did, questioning everything about personal approaches to life, success, and authenticity is happening. You've planted seeds of dissatisfaction with mediocrity that will grow whether you want them to or not. Some are secretly trying to reconstruct personal personalities, hoping to capture even a fraction of the energy you demonstrated. Communication styles are being changed. Attempts to carry oneself differently are happening. Experimenting with bolder choices occurs. Of course, these efforts fall short because trying to imitate the external manifestations of something that comes from deep internal alignment is happening, but the fact that these changes are even being attempted shows how profoundly you've affected the sense of what's possible. You've shattered comfort with being ordinary, with blending into the background, with accepting less than what's capable of being achieved. That restlessness, that dissatisfaction with previous limitations is exactly what needed to be awakened. You proved beyond doubt that you're playing an entirely different game than everyone around you, and this proof brings everything full circle, transforming that initial meteor impact into a permanent new reality. Most people operate in spaces where the goal is immediate gratification, quick wins that can be seen and celebrated, reactions that can be provoked for instant satisfaction, or results that look impressive on the surface. That's the game being played: short-term moves, temporary victories, maintaining appearances. Success gets measured by immediate outcomes, by who notices first, by how others perceive right now, rather than how actions will compound over time. It's shallow strategy, focused more on optics than substance, quick fixes than lasting transformation. Then you made a move that didn't just succeed in the moment, it exposed a completely different level of thinking that couldn't even begin to be comprehended. Your action wasn't about immediate applause, visible rewards, or temporary advantages. It emerged from depth, long-term vision, and strategic thinking, operating on timescales that have never been considered. It wasn't just a clever tactic, it was an expression of who you are at core, how you operate when aligned with authentic power. That kind of move is impossible to copy, because it's tied to identity and character, rather than just skill. What unsettles most is being able to see the difference clearly now. Recognition exists that while focus has been on superficial wins that fade quickly, you've been building leverage, influence and impact in ways that won't disappear. You're not chasing recognition or approval, you're creating results that endure and compound over time. That contrast highlights how shallow everyone else's efforts have been and how much energy has been wasted on things that ultimately don't matter. Every time reflection on what you did happens, separating the action from the person behind it can't happen. Understanding exists, even if admission won't happen, that you operate on a level that hasn't been reached. That realization stings because it exposes the limitations of approaches being used. You've shown that the real game isn't about immediate advantage, it's about strategy, foresight, patience, and complete alignment with purpose. Being stuck trying to figure out your method happens, but duplicating it can't happen because it's not just about tactics. It's about how you live consistently, the choices you make when no one is watching, and the depth of thought behind every significant action you take. You've moved on a plane of existence that wasn't even aware of existing, and now acknowledgement is forced that short-term wins are meaningless in comparison to the kind of lasting impact you create simply by being who you truly are. You didn't just outplay everyone in a single moment, you revealed an entirely different game with different rules, different objectives, and different measures of what actually constitutes victory. What you've done isn't just a single act, it's a series of moments that reshaped perceptions, shifted power, and rewrote the rules for everyone around you. You didn't just act, you left proof of strength, clarity, and fearlessness that can't be ignored, forgotten, or undone. Every move you made shattered lazy assumptions, exposed hidden competitions, and revealed truths that people weren't ready to face. You showed that real power isn't given, it's claimed, that authenticity carries more weight than appearances, and that limitations are often self-imposed. The impact of your actions lingers because it's permanent. You've created mental loops that can't be shut off, benchmarks that can't be reached, and reflections that can't be escaped. You moved on a plane that wasn't prepared for, and in doing so, forced to confront realities about themselves, expectations, and the fragility of control that was thought to be held. It can't be unseen, it can't be undone, and most importantly, it can't be stopped from being thought about because you've changed the landscape entirely. This is more than shock or surprise. It's a revelation, a reminder that the person who dares to act from truth, courage, and clarity isn't just noticed. You are unforgettable. Your actions have proven that influence, power, and respect are earned through authenticity, decisiveness, and the willingness to step beyond the predictable. Reflection, replay, and analysis can happen, but nothing can diminish the reality of what you accomplished. So let this be a testament, chosen one. You didn't just leave an impression, you left a legacy in minds everywhere. You proved that boldness rewrites expectations, that integrity outlasts manipulation, and that living fully in your own power leaves a permanent mark. People may be obsessed with what you did, but that's because it matters. You moved differently, you acted boldly, and now the world and everyone in it will never look at the situation the same way again. People can't stop thinking about you, and honestly, that's exactly how it should be. The meteor you dropped into your comfort zones at the beginning of this story, those ripples have become permanent waves, reshaping the entire landscape of reality around you. What started as shock has transformed into recognition. What began as disruption has become the new order, and what was first seen as a single devastating move has revealed itself as the emergence of your authentic power. You're not just living rent-free in the penthouse of minds anymore. You've become the architect of entire mental landscapes. Every thought about strength, authenticity, and power is now filtered through the lens of what you showed everyone. That's not dominance. That's transformation. And chosen one, that's exactly the level you were born to operate on.